Welcome to the NonProfit Voice Tech Series, a special edition of the NonProfit Voice podcast, hosted by Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member of NonProfit Pro. In each episode of this monthly installment, Mark will have conversations with prominent nonprofit organizations and industry thought leaders to learn more about different technology offerings in the marketplace. Join us, and together we will learn more about these innovative digital tools and how to navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Mark Becker here again. Looking forward to today's conversation. Today we have Allison Fine and Beth Cantor on the line. They recently published a book, not their first one, and I've listened to it recently. I kind of cheated. I got the audio book, but was multitasking over the weekend and listened to it. A lot of great stuff in here. So very excited to chat with both of you today. Welcome.
Thank you for having us, Mark.
Yeah, great to be here.
Anything you'd like to share about your backgrounds? Definitely want to ask Allison, why did you write the book? But anything before we dive into there?
Well, we can introduce ourselves. Beth, you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Beth Cantor, and I am an author and facilitator and trainer, and I've worked at the intersection of tech and nonprofit mission-driven work for the last 35 years or so. And I work in the areas of digital transformation and workplace well-being. So it's always been about leadership and workplace culture and its relationship with tech.
And I'm Allison Fine, and like Beth, I've spent my entire career in the social sector. I had a first career in program evaluation, and for the last 15, 16, 17 years, working at the intersection of tech and social good. So to answer your question, Mark, why this book, why now? It is because we're at a critical inflection point with what we call smart tech, AI, and related technologies that are doing rote tasks for and instead of people. And what makes it really important is that we feel really strongly that smart tech can be the elixir to the always on 24/7 toxic work cultures that make work a game of whack-a-mole and help to lead to the great resignation. Instead, when organizations use smart tech well, which is what we're going to talk about with you, the hope is that we can pivot from being transactional, always on the hamster wheel, to having people do what people should do, which is to build strong relationships and to solve problems and to tell stories.
That's great. No, that's terrific. And yeah, Beth, throughout the book, you all are talking about smart tech and the dividend of time, right? Can you explain what you see as smart tech and what it does?
Sure. So in the book, we call smart tech, we use an umbrella term to reply to advanced digital technologies that are making decisions like what to watch on TV and automating tasks like answering questions or filling out forms. So specifically, the types of tech that are there are artificial intelligence and its subsets and cousins such as machine learning, natural language processing, smart forms, chatbots, robots, and computer vision. But the book really isn't about the tech itself, because we don't see adopting smart tech as a technical problem. It's not like grabbing software off the shelf or sending it down the hall to the IT department. It's really a leadership challenge to stay human-centered and really put people before the machines and finding that sweet spot between what the machines can do best, which is analyze lots of data, do a lot of that grunt work and rote work that exhausts us, and what the humans do best, judgment, empathy, just staying human, relationship building.
Yeah, it was definitely very clear throughout the book. And I love how you kept on, coming back to that point. It's not about replacing people, it's about freeing people up to do what people do and leave the computers and the algorithms and the programming to do all the things that people don't want to do anyways, right? And it definitely frees them up to do more things, but also takes that repetitive, boring, rote piece of the element out of everything, right? So that was really great.
Yeah, we want to caution though, not to use the technology to just do more of the same. And this is where it gets to that point where, it is a leadership issue, it's a workplace culture issue. And this is a chance for us to really, change and not continuing doing the same old, forcing people to work these long hours. Okay, so we're more efficient at doing more work. That's not the idea. It's that we have this free time, this dividend of time that we talk about throughout the book, that, well, we could have life-work balance. Maybe we could have a life outside of work. Maybe we could switch to the 4-day work week and other things, fundraisers, in our sector, after people who are working on the front line, like social workers and people in the medical profession, they're the next ones that burn out and leave. So let's stop burning people out and driving them out of the sector, let's turn it around. And smart tech is part of that strategy.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples in the book is about the leaky bucket, and talking about not just, again, to your point, the scattershot of everything, right? Not just hitting everybody with the same messages, but really refining that and making it targeted and segmenting and using smart tech to help you do that, right? What are some of your favorite examples from the book?
So let me lean into that leaky bucket issue, Mark, because it is one of our favorite topics. We don't talk nearly enough in the sector about the fact that 75% of donors won't make it from year 1 to year 2, right? That is a dreadful retention rate, and it is typical of the sector because we have this voracious need to keep asking people for money because we know the bucket is leaking. So you got to keep filling it up as fast as you can. That is the type of transactional work that we really want organizations to pivot away from. So for instance, the Rainforest Action Network used smart tech to increase the amount of monthly donors by over 800%, right? And they did this by using smart tech and understanding these donors, these new donors, in a really deeply way, using thousands of data points from, not just the organization, but on the web, right? There's a lot that we can know about people to customize the stories and the communications directly for them. So we can customize fundraising, customize communications for individuals at scale, not just for the $1 million giver, but for the $25 giver as well, right? And it had this explosive improvement for that organization. So that's the kind of ways that we really want folks to begin to think about. How can we hit the hearts of our people, volunteers, board members, donors, in much more meaningful ways for them? And when we can increase that retention rate, we can take the pressure off of the development teams to be racing at 1,000 miles an hour every single day.
I love it. That's great. Beth, how about you?
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction in terms of examples because there's a whole array of them. And I want to pick one up that's using smart tech for program delivery. And I love this example because it just shows the steps that we need to take to remain human-centered. And the story begins with the Trevor Project, which provides crisis counseling to LGBTQ plus people. So they had a problem, okay? They had more demand for their services from teens in distress than they had trained counselors to support them. Okay, so that's a, that's a life and death problem, right? So they created a bot called Riley, and they didn't replace the counselors with Riley because that's not being human-centered. And also bear in mind that the particular counseling that's delivered, it's, it's very, they have to be well trained, use the right language, that, it really requires human empathy skills. And these are people who are volunteers that are counselors, and so the counselors can only be trained by staff, right? And they were short on staff, and also staff work during quote normal business hours, and volunteers were doing this on evenings and weekends. So they really didn't have the staffing capacity to be able to deliver enough trainings to scale enough of the volunteer counselors to deliver this life-saving intervention to teens in crisis. So Enter Riley, the chatbot, was created to solve this particular problem by being trained on some data set that was actual conversations that the counselors were having, stripped of all identifiable information to retain privacy. And this enabled them to scale and add on more counselors, but it also shifted staff's jobs. It didn't replace them. So instead of like delivering a lot of training, they were more monitoring the delivery of the training. I mean, the delivery of the counseling. So all in all, this is a great example because it shows how they were human-centered and how I took a pledge to do no harm to the end user.
I like it. And it even had some examples throughout the book, a couple of examples where the things were tested by an organization and it actually didn't have the results that they were hoping for and wanted, but they were able to pivot and kind of redirect from there. So while that wasn't a success, they still learned from their projects, their testing, and moved on from there. So yeah, I think that's terrific.
Yeah, and I love that example too. I think you're referring to the Black Cat Adoption Week, but
right.
that they were, and you can imagine with one of these self-learning bots that can learn by interacting, if they put that out there to the general public, what kinds of things could go wrong with the words black and
for
cat.
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah, it's just asking for trouble for sure. Yeah. The world doesn't need a whole lot. The trolls out there don't need a whole lot of help, right? You don't want to give them a tool.
They don't need any help at all.
Right.
The people trolls, but the bot trolls as well, right?
And there's precedent for that too. A couple of years. I mean, we hear these stories pop up occasionally. You would think people have learned this lesson, but there was one bot developed by a large tech company called Tay. And it was intended it was for Twitter, and it was intended to interact with young people to figure out how to talk to young people. But the trolls got a hold of it, and within 24 hours, it became a racist, misogynist, evil bot, and they had to take it down.
Geez. I think that kind of leads into my next question then for you, Allison, is what is about the challenges? What about, when it comes to adopting smart tech and ethical responsibility and just the overall side effects? That's one example, but any thoughts around that?
Lots of thoughts. Right. So there's a whole big bucket of concern of making sure that you are using the technology to improve lives and not to do any harm. So that's one whole area. Another area that has gotten significant amounts of attention over the last couple of years is the likelihood that the system will have biases built right into it. Either people who are writing the code build their own, biases. Maybe it's racism or gender, biases, completely unintentionally at times into the code itself, because we are talking about taking over human decision making. Or the data sets that they're using to train the systems to look for patterns have bias built into them. And you will see this in places like, say, housing, where historically Black and brown people have been left out of mortgage systems. So if you are creating an algorithm to pre-screen people for mortgages, and you've used an historic database to train the system of who's okay and who's not okay, you are almost by definition going to continue to leave out Black and brown people. And then you have privacy issues as well. How are people using the data? Are they making sure people really are anonymous? Are they protecting users' data as well? All of these things are going to happen within these systems, Mark. No tech is ever going to be perfect. It is incumbent upon organizational leadership to understand the opportunities where bias and other discriminatory factors are going to weigh into systems, and to press vendors on how did they test these systems, what assumptions did they put into it, and what can they tell us about this? Because nobody should be buying black boxes, and those are too often being now sold by commercial vendors.
That's a great point. And I loved you mentioning that in the book. And yeah, because there's so often a black box involved. What happens over there? I don't know. Well, should we accept that?
Well, it's
It's our
proprietary.
proprietary code, right? We're
Right.
not asking to look at the code. We're not coders, right? We are asking, what assumptions did you make in building this system, and how have you tested it for bias? Those are the kinds of questions we have in the book that we need organizations to be asking.
So Beth, with all this in mind, how does a nonprofit prepare to start using, tech well? What kind of steps can they take?
Sure. We devote an entire chapter to this topic, and there's there's a lot of useful checklists and kinds of questions, but the steps are ready, set, go. And the readiness is really about, again, it's a leadership and a culture issue. So it's having those conversations that pinpoint the pain points from the end user's point of view. Okay, so where is grunt work exhausting people in the organization, or where is it that we're missing out on cultivating potentially lapsed donors, or what is that pain point? What problem are we trying to solve? And it's not just the organizational staff sitting around the table and thinking up what the problem is. They need to go out and talk to their clients, their program users, or their donors, or even other staff, whoever they're designing for, or to test out, is this the real problem? Because often those initial ideas around the problem to solve, they change and evolve. If we think back to the Trevor Project and Riley, maybe the initial thing, we can replace counselors, but no. The real pain point is
Right.
scaling the training. And you don't want to use this technology for everything. It's like hot sauce. Not ketchup. You want to use a little bit in the right place before dumping it everywhere, or you'll probably ruin your meal. The next thing is set, and Allison already talked about the importance of really understanding your technical partners and your tool vendors, and what assumptions were kind of built into the algorithms. What were the data sets? And there's a lot of questions that we have in the book, a checklist that you can ask. But even more importantly than that, I think the most important thing is for leaders and for organizations to reflect: does this technology partner, do their values align with our values? All right. It's a values-based decision, right? It's not a technical decision, and that's a leadership discussion. And then it's important to set up an ethical advisory board. I think Allison maybe touched on this a bit. And these are people who have an understanding of the tech, but also the ethical issues that, and it's a pair of set of outside eyes that have an ethics lens. And what's cool about this is that there's an opportunity for collaboration with nonprofits. Not every nonprofit needs to set up their own ethical advisory board. Maybe it's a group of food banks that do it and share it. And in that, there's the do no harm pledge. Again, and Allison's already mentioned some of the challenges or the bad results. We don't want anything bad to happen. So there's a conversation about what are the potential things that could happen, what are the risks, and how can we mitigate those? At that point, you're ready to come up with a proof of concept, a small pilot for you to learn. And it's really about iterating and inching your way towards that scale. And once you are at scale, the technology is not like a pot roast where you kind of set it and forget it. It does need, some tending to, like a puppy needs tending to. So it's ready, set, go. There's a lot more detail in our book, checklists and types of questions to ask and the step-by-steps.
Yeah, a lot of good nuggets in there, and yeah, definitely a lot of detail and more actionable items in the book. So well done. So Allison, where do you see this all leading? What are the trends? I mean, I know, obviously the goal is to get to that sweet spot of, smart tech and people, right? And maximizing both sides. So what are the trends you're seeing, or where do you see this leading, as we move forward?
So right this second, Mark, we're at what we call the heel of the hockey stick of
I like it.
smart tech availability, right? It's becoming much more available commercially and inexpensive. So everyday people and organizations can use it. It is coming into every single area and department of organizations, from comms to marketing to development to services to back office. So every person in an organization is going to be touched by smart tech and be making decisions about smart tech, either in its everyday use or in the strategic, understanding of the organization. We need a lot more practice in how to identify these pain points, as Beth mentioned, and get the right product in use. We need a lot more reflection on what is happening with our people when systems and processes are automated. And finally, we need a lot more intentional purpose in moving to being deeply relational, which is ultimately our greatest hope.
I like it. Beth, any final thoughts around that?
Sure, and I'll put my workplace well-being cap on for this one. And Mark, I'm sure you've seen this in the work you do. I mean, we're at this point where we have a nonprofit workforce crisis brewing. People, we have an increase of demand for services, and we have people burning out and leaving because of these toxic environments, unbelievable workflows, and just not even time to take, and even thought of having a life outside of your work. And I think that while smart tech is not magic fairy dust, we're not going to sprinkle on that and solve this huge crisis, but it's part of the solution. But it rests at the feet of leaders of nonprofits for them to lean into this in a very human-centered, reflective, and knowledgeable way.
I like it. Well, that seems like a great place to leave it. Thank you so much, Allison and Beth, for joining us today. And I highly recommend anybody out there that's interested in this topic and working in this industry at all, definitely check out the book, Smart Nonprofit, available on Amazon, right? I know that's where I found it. So definitely check it out. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Nonprofit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of The Nonprofit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of The Nonprofit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.